5 hours of sleep, 3 weeks straight. Your team lost 2 people last quarter and nobody was replaced. The deadlines didn't move. The expectations didn't shrink. You're answering Slack messages at 10 p.m. because the morning stand-up will expose anything you didn't finish. And the culture has made it very clear. Falling behind is a character flaw, not a resource problem. Then on Friday, an email lands in your inbox from HR. The subject line reads, "Your well-being matters to us." Inside, there's a link to a meditation app, a schedule for a lunchtime yoga session, and a reminder that the Employee Assistance Program offers 6 free therapy sessions per year. You stare at the screen. You don't need a breathing exercise. You need a manageable workload. You don't need a resilience webinar. You need your manager to stop assigning 3 people's jobs to one person and calling it efficiency. They're not treating burnout. They're managing your output while you burn. By the end of this video, you'll know whether your company's wellness program is actual support or corporate self-defense. Here's what's happening at scale. Companies are offering individual coping tools for problems that are organizational in origin. The causes of burnout, chronic understaffing, unrealistic deadlines, zero accountability management, always-on culture, those are system-level failures. But the solutions get aimed squarely at the individual. Meditate more, breathe better, build resilience, set boundaries. The workplace produces the injury, then it hands you a pamphlet on healing. That mismatch is the entire problem. The causes of burnout are organizational. The solutions offered are almost always individual. And that gap isn't an oversight. It's where the real story starts. That is the thesis. Wellness programs become a liability shield when they replace structural change instead of complementing it. Now, to be clear, therapy is valuable. Exercise matters. Mental health resources save lives. Nothing here is an argument against those things. The argument is against organizations that deploy them as a substitute for fixing what's actually breaking people. But there's a deeper reason this keeps happening, and it has nothing to do with whether leadership cares about employees. Because the incentive math is brutally simple. A headcount increase hits budget. A wellness vendor hits benefits. One needs CFO approval in a 6-month business case. The other gets signed in a week. Redesigning workloads means admitting that current workloads are harmful. Replacing a toxic manager means acknowledging that leadership failed in hiring or oversight. Adjusting performance expectations means confronting the gap between what the company promises clients and what the workforce can actually deliver. Every one of those changes requires an uncomfortable conversation with someone who has power. A meditation app requires none of those conversations. Wellness programs also create a useful institutional record. When an employee raises a grievance, the organization can point to the resources that were made available. That's not necessarily calculated. It's just institutional self-preservation. You don't need a villain in a boardroom. You need a system that optimizes for cost control, productivity metrics, and reputational safety. Systemic change threatens all three. A wellness program threatens none of them. That's why the default is always the app, the webinar, the wellness week. Not because leadership is evil, because the incentives make the Band-Aid cheaper than the surgery. Every single time. And once you see that, the entire system starts to make uncomfortable sense. Now here's the part that does the most psychological damage, and most employees never realize it's happening. When a company provides wellness resources but leaves harmful conditions intact, the responsibility for stress migrates, quietly, gradually, from the organization to the employee. It works in 4 steps. Step 1. Workplace conditions create chronic stress. Understaffing, unreasonable deadlines, poor management, no separation between work and life. Step 2. The company rolls out wellness tools. Step 3. The stress continues because the root causes haven't changed. Step 4. The employee is now reframed as someone who was given the tools and isn't using them effectively. And then you start hearing it. Your manager says, "You need to set better boundaries." Boundaries against what? Against the workload they assigned? HR says, "Make sure you're using the wellness resources." Which deadline move to make time for that? Your performance review says you need to improve stress management and demonstrate resilience. Translation, you visibly struggled under conditions that would break anyone, and that's now a development area. Then comes the real weaponization. Resilience becomes a performance metric. Culture fit gets used to describe people who don't complain. The employee who flags systemic overwork is labeled not solutions oriented. The one who quietly absorbs the dysfunction and smiles through it gets promoted. The story has fully shifted. It's no longer the system is overwhelming people, it's you're not managing stress properly. And once that narrative takes hold, burnout stops being an organizational failure and becomes your personal deficiency. That is not a side effect of poorly designed wellness programs. In many organizations, that's exactly how it ends up functioning. Here's what it looks like in practice. A senior developer ships a project 2 days late after covering 3 roles for a quarter. In his performance review, his manager writes, needs to develop stronger stress management skills and demonstrate more proactive resilience. There's no mention of the understaffing, no mention that 2 teammates left and were never replaced. The system failure becomes his development area. He leaves 6 months later. In the exit interview, HR marks it as voluntary attrition and rolls out a new resilience workshop the following Monday. So how do you tell the difference between real support and performance? Fortunately, there's a very simple way to tell, and most employees already know the answer the moment they hear the questions. Here's a 3-question test you can apply right now. 1. Did workloads decrease after the wellness program launched? If the company added yoga but didn't subtract a single deadline, the workload is the tell. 2. Do toxic managers face real consequences? If your worst manager still has their job and the company just shipped a mental health newsletter, the program is a decoration. 3. Can employees actually use the benefits without penalty? If you have therapy coverage but no schedule flexibility to attend a session, if using the benefit means falling behind, then it's not a benefit, it's a press release. If any answer is no, what you're looking at isn't wellness, it's optics. And here's one more tell. If productivity is measured weekly, but well-being is measured once a year in a survey nobody reads, and nothing changes when the scores drop, that's not a program, that's theater. Watch for the rest of the patterns. Wellness weeks scheduled during peak crunch periods. Employees raising systemic concerns and getting told to practice self-care. The company celebrating resilience as a core value while treating operational complaints as negativity. If coping tools alone don't fix burnout, what does? The most useful way to think about this comes from a public health framework that breaks prevention into 3 levels. The first and most critical level is primary prevention, fixing the design of work itself. Realistic staffing so people aren't absorbing extra roles indefinitely. Workload limits that are actually enforced. Manager accountability where leaders who burn through teams face real consequences. Reassignment, demotion, removal. Clear role boundaries so people aren't perpetually guessing what's expected. This is where the most meaningful change happens. It's also the level most companies skip entirely. The second level is secondary prevention, catching problems early, tracking burnout indicators across teams, not just engagement scores, running employee feedback loops where the feedback actually changes something, analyzing turnover patterns instead of treating every resignation as an isolated event. The third level is tertiary support, recovery, therapy access, mental health leave, wellness resources. This is where those tools belong, and they're genuinely valuable here. But here's the core problem. Most organizations jump straight to level 3 and skip levels 1 and 2 completely. They offer recovery tools while continuing to produce the damage. That's handing out painkillers at a construction site where the scaffolding keeps collapsing and never inspecting the scaffolding. Which is why the story keeps repeating. The exhausted engineer who quietly burns out and disappears from the team. The project manager who takes stress leave after covering 2 vacant roles for 6 months. The employee who starts believing the problem must be their resilience because the system insists nothing else is wrong. So what can you actually do with this understanding? If you're a high-leverage employee, senior, specialized, hard to replace, use that position with precision. Document how workload distribution affects cycle time, error rate, and churn. Don't say the team is stressed. Say, we've lost 3 senior engineers in 8 months, and onboarding replacements cost 6 figures each. Make ignoring the problem more expensive than fixing it. If you have moderate leverage, stop raising concerns alone. Compare workload, deadlines, and overtime across your team. Patterns beat anecdotes. One person flagging burnout is easy to dismiss as a performance issue. 6 people presenting the same data is an operational risk. If you're in a low leverage position in a genuinely toxic environment, stop internalizing the blame. The system is designed to make you believe your exhaustion is a personal failure. It isn't. Use whatever resources actually help you, but start building an exit strategy, not out of defeat, but out of clarity. You are not obligated to heal in the same environment that's making you sick. Now, in fairness, some wellness programs are built alongside real organizational investment. Some companies add headcount and therapy access. Some leaders change policies and offer recovery support. Here's what that looks like. It comes with reduced workloads, policy changes, and manager consequences. When those things are present, wellness programs are genuine. When they're absent, wellness is a brand exercise. The standard isn't complicated, it's just rarely met. So here's the uncomfortable question. If a company knows the workload is unsustainable, but keeps adding wellness programs instead of reducing the workload, is that care or is it damage control? Here's the bottom line. A meditation app cannot offset broken workplace design. Resilience training cannot neutralize abusive management. A wellness stipend cannot restore the hours stolen by a culture that treats availability as loyalty and exhaustion as dedication. Wellness programs are not the problem. The problem is deploying them as the entire response to conditions that require structural accountability. When a company offers breathing exercises but won't touch the budget, the org chart, or the manager responsible, they're not buying your health. They're buying quiet. Because a quiet workforce is easier to manage than a healthy one. Wellness without structural change isn't care, it's damage control.